I saw an abandoned boat, very small, remote, drifting downstream and throwing off the most my sodden clothes. I went after it, gained it, and so escaped out of the destination. There were no oars in the boat, but I convinced the paddle as much as my pro-boiled hands would allow. Down the river to the wards, Holfer and the Walton, going very tedious and continually looking behind me. As you may well understand, I followed the river because I considered the water gave me my best chance of escape. Should these gains return, the hot water from the Martians overthrew, drifted, and downstream with me, so that after for the best part of a mile I could see little of either bank. Once, however, I made out a string of black figures hurrying across the meadows from the direction of Weybridge. Holliford, it seemed, was quite deserted, and several of the houses facing the river were on the fire. It was so strange to see the place quiet and in Traguil, quite desolate under the hot blue sky, with the smoke and a little thread of flame going straight up into the head of the afternoon. Never before had I seen these houses burning without accomplishment of. A very hard and subtle thing appeared in front of me. An inconvenient crowd. A little further off the dry reeds up the bank were smoking and glowing, and a line of fire inland was marching steadily across the fire of the hay. For a long time I drifted, so painful and weary was I after the violence I had chosen through, and to intense the heat upon the water. Then my feelings got better and of me again, and I resumed padding. Padding, the sun scorched me bare back at last. As the bridge at Walton was coming into sight round the bend, my fever and faintness overcome my fears, and I landed onto the Middlesex bank and lay down deadly, sank the long grass. I suppose time was about to be ready. I got up presently, walked perhaps half a mile without meeting a soul, and then lay down again into the shadow of a hedge. I seemed a remarkable remained talking vainly to myself during the last sup. I was also very thirsty and better regretful I had drunk no more water. It was continuously thing that I felt angry with my wife. I cannot account of it, but my impotent desire and to reach the Leatherland worried me very aggressively. I did not clearly remember the arrival of our creature, so I probably dozed. I became aware of him and a sacred figure in soot-smudged shirt sleeves, and then he upturned, clean-shaven face and staring at a faint flickering that danced over the sky. The sky was what I called a martial sky, rose and rows of faint down plums of cloud just tinted with the mindset sunset. I sat up, and as the rustle of the motion, he quickly looked at me. Have you any water? I asked abruptly. He shook her head. You have been asking for water for the last hour, he said. For a moment, we were silent, talking stock of one another. I was desiredly he found me a strange enough figure, naked, save for the soaked trousers and socks, saddled at my face and shoulders for the smoke. His face was a fair weakness, his chin retired, and his hairs lay his crisp, almost fallen curls, and his low forehead. His eyes were rather large, pale blue, and blanky. Staring, he spokily abruptly looked vacantly away from me. What does it mean? He said. What do these things mean? I stared at him and made no answer. He extended with a thin white hand of spoke in almost a completing tone. Why are these things permitted? What the sins have we done? The morning service was over. I was walking through the roads of clear my brain for afternoon, and then fire, earthquake, death. As if it was Sodom and Gomorrah all over. What are we? I answered, clearing my throat. He gripped his knees and turned to look me again. For half hour, perhaps, he started silently. I was walking through the road to clear my brain, he said, and suddenly fire, earthquake, death. He replaced his silence with a chain, now second almost in his knees. Perhaps He began waving his hand. All the work, all the Sunday schools. What have we done? The church we rebuilt. It was only three things gone, swept out of existence. Why? Another pause, and he broke out like one demanded. The smoke of her burning goeth up the forever and ever, he shouted. His eyes flamed and the pointed of a lean finger in the direction of the weighbridge. By the time I was beginning to take the mayor, the tremendous tragedy in which he had been fooled, it was evident that the figure why he ween. Perhaps, are we far from sunburn? I said, matters of the fact of the tone. What are we to do? He asked, are those creatures elsewhere? Has the earth been given over them? Are we far from the Sunbury? Only this morning I affected at clearly celebration. Things have been changed, I asked quietly. You must look your head, they still be hoping. Yes, plentiful. Hope for the destruction. I began to explain my view for our position. He listened at first, but as we went in interest in the eyes to the former stare, he regret wanted for me. This must be the beginning at the end, and said, interrupting me, the end, the great terrible mountain. When the men shall call upon the mountain, the rocks had fallen them, and hide them from the front of the face that sitten upon the throat. I began to understand my position. I ceased my labored reasoning, struggled to my feet, and standing over him, laid my head on his shoulder. Be a man, said I. You are scared of your wits. What is a religion if it collapses at calamity? Think of the earthquakes and floods. Wars and violence have done before to men. Did you think God has exempted? Well, bring, he said, not in insurance. For the time he sat in the blank silence, but why he kept escape. Then are you valuable, are you pitiless? Neither have you perhaps when I asked. And the matter that the more sane and wary should we be. Once one of them was killed. Yoder, not 3 hours, killed, he said, staring about him. How can God ministers be killed? God ministers? He said. Killed, he said, staring about him. How can God's minister be killed? What are the flicker in the sky? He asked abruptly. I took him in the holograph slidingly that it was a sign of a human help and effort in the sky. We are in the midst of it, I said, quiet as it is. That flickered in the sky tells the gathering storm. Yonder, I took it, and the Martinez and the London Way, where those hills rise about, Richmond's and Kingston, and these trees give cover, earthworks, and began to the guns laid. Perhaps Mahesh was coming this way again. And then, even we spoke, he sprang off his feet and stopped me from gestures. Listen, he said. From beyond the law of the hills across the water came the dull resonance of the distant guns and remote, weird crying. Then everything was still. A cock-keffer came droning over the hedge of a past us. High in the west, consent moon hung faint and pale above the smoke wavering and the stepheron and the hot still splendor of our sunset. We had better follow this path, I said. Northwards? Yeah, he said. And my brother in London when the Martinez fell at working. It was a medical student working at the imminent examination, and he said nothing of the arrival until Sunday morning. The morning paper of Sunday contained in the edition of everything he said. The morning, perhaps, yeah. The Martinez, alarmed by the approach of a crowd, he killed a number of people quickly. Firing guns through the sky ran the telegram concluded with words formidable as they seem, and the Martinez have not moved in the pit. Probably this is due to the incapable of doing so. Probably this is due to the relative strength of the Earth's gravitational energy. On that last text, the letter writing expanded over the common faculty. Of course, all the students in the Kramer's biology class, to which my brother went that day, were interestingly, but there was no sign of them. Yeah, I reclaimed. Any unusual excitement in the stress after the non-paper scarp of the news big headlines? They had nothing to tell me beyond the move. The troops, perhaps I would like to